So this is part two. So you were just asking me about Bob Iger. Well, Bob Chapek has been fired, or is that how it's been manoeuvred?
I'm sort of reading about this. I believe he was. Well, it's like when you're in corporate world, it probably will come out. Let's sort of like see what's going on at Disney. Bob Iger. I would imagine that they would say his contract is coming to an end, and so Bob Iger is back at Disney. BBC is saying it's a shock return. Bob Iger's management sequel at Disney from the Financial Times. Bob Iger, Disney's Mr. Fix-It returns as it faces big challenges. That's The Guardian. Times, Disney shares jump as Iger returns to restore confidence. Hollywood Reporter, Disney shocker Bob Iger returning as CEO Chapek exits. So that's the only one that's referenced Chapek. Let's see if they sort of go on. So Chapek has been there for over 20 years. He got promoted to CEO after Iger stood down. And what he's really telling is he signed a new multi-year contract in June. And I believe there is, I believe the issue has come through basically things that are being put on the Disney streaming service is not being received very well at all. And I think that is the main issue. So that has to include TV series. It has to include, to an element, Star Wars, and it has to include the movies that are going to Disney Plus when they've left the cinema. So all in all, there must be, and I don't think we'll ever get an acknowledgement that they've gone in a wrong direction, but I absolutely believe that. So Disney subscriptions are gaining. So there's 235 million across Disney Plus, and what's key here, ESPN and Hulu, sorry. But the streaming losses have continued to grow to nearly 1.5 billion, making it more challenging to hit its profitability targets. Well, I think the easiest way about that would be introducing a lower tier with adverts and a higher tier without adverts. I think that's the way that you get around that, so everybody can enjoy the content. But it's a choice of whether you want adverts or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. Did you hear as well about because obviously we'll talk about some of the movies not being as big a cash cow as they thought they were going to be, these franchises. Obviously 2018's Black Panther was like a massive hit. Yes. I personally really liked that film. I didn't think it was the best of the MCU, but I thought it was above average for MCU standards. And I like Chadwick Boseman as well. Obviously, he passed away. That was it wasn't Disney's fault, but the movie itself just tied in with the MCU agenda of, swapping main characters being male to being female. I mean, that's demonstrable. Nerdrotic just did a video about that, about how they did an actual head count. It was basically in terms of new characters added throughout Phase 4. It was about 15 new male characters, like main characters, 15, many of which have been killed off. Female ones about 27, none of which have been killed off. So when you kind of look up how they've done that, the new Black Panther movie was certainly no exception. And it didn't do brilliantly. It did okay, but not as good as it needed to do, especially when you factor in the massive budget, which I was talking about in the last video. But also from weekend to weekend, it's had a significant, I say record-breaking, as in for Marvel standards, record-breaking drop in terms of box office sales from one weekend to the next. The previous holder of that record was Thor: Love and Thunder, which was also recently released. So Disney's seen this pattern of not so much losing money, but not making as much money as they need to, which does inevitably lead to losing money if their films can't break even because they've got massive budgets. Anyway, I'll let you brand it a bit.
Well, what I'm sort of looking at there is, and why I was not sort of looking at camera there was not because I was being rude. I was sort of like looking to see where we're at. So Black Panther, budget 200 million, box office 1.382 billion.
Yeah.
Wakanda Forever, 250 million budget, 546.3 million at the box office. It goes to show that they had a whole of the story. I've been reading into the I've been getting more context about this, and they actually had a sequel for Black Panther written, and then they rewrote it after the guy passed. I don't want to say his name wrong. Chadwick Boseman. After Chadwick Boseman passed, they they rewrote it. Now, here's the question. I understand that to a degree, but why wouldn't they have recast? Do you know what
He
I mean?
wanted him to. His Chadwick Boseman's brother has even been vocal about it and said, he basically said, I'm part of the recast T'Challa movement because that's what my brother specifically wanted. But I think they took advantage of the fact that he died and basically played that emotion that you've got for the loss of the actor and tried to kind of transplant that into the movie so you feel that emotion, similar to what they did with Paul Walker in Fast and Furious. But I think that was a bit more tastefully done, especially when you realise that Vin Diesel was friends with Paul Walker, very similar to Brian and what's his name, the character from the film that Vin Diesel plays. But
Toretto.
Toretto, yeah. So I think it was valid to kind of project that in the movie, but maybe not so much in Black Panther. It felt more like exploitation.
Absolutely. I mean, you just look at Phase 4. There's some really good stuff, and I know we've spoken about this off camera on a number of times. But there's been some really good stuff being done. For example, they did a television special called Werewolf by Night, where Marvel
The things about that.
paid homage to the 1940s horror scene, and it is absolutely fantastic. Taken on its own, it is absolutely worth the watch. I can't recommend that enough. Black Widow, that was another excellent film, but it was picking up off the character of Black Widow. You know, do you see what you saw? They didn't try and make the Black Widow film and let's recast Black Widow and the sisters with, a male character and a load of brothers. They followed it through. You've got Shang-Chi, it was okay. Eternals, I did not like that whatsoever. I thought that was overblown, just poor, really poor. Spider-Man No Way Home, I've got my own views on Spider-Man.
Apparently very good, that one. I didn't watch it, but apparently it was quite good.
Doctor Strange I enjoyed. Thor I watched 20 minutes of, and Black Panther Wakanda Forever I will probably give it a watch because I like the first one, but I'm hoping that I don't know what direction Disney will be taking with Phase 5. Have you got any, with Bob Iger going back, have you got any hope that things can re-establish itself? So, like when they first came on, they had this big 10 to 15 year plan, didn't they? They had this big arcing story, and it worked. It was incredible. Who'd have thought that after Iron Man 1 that all of this would come to light?
Yeah, well, I mean, they had the plan, and I know they kind of announced it like step by step, so they didn't announce the whole thing, but obviously they rolled out, they had an idea as to what they wanted to do, and I think from what I understand, they did it. I don't know if where they are now is because I remember it was said back in like 2015 that they were basically plotting the course for the MCU all the way up to the end of the 20s, so like up to 2030. I kind of doubt that's where they've gone. I think they've gone off in a different direction because of the culture war, because of the fact that they've just got lunatics that have taken over the asylum. The far left has done its rampage, through the long march through the institutions that they said they were going to do, and the activists are in control, putting the message first ahead of actual storytelling, which is, let's put aside whether or not you agree with the message. It doesn't make for good storytelling when you're basically giving someone a story arc based on what they are rather than who they are. You get characters like Rey from Star Wars, whose only attribute is that she's a woman. Not like that she's had an actual story arc or a character development.
And that's not to say Rey was a bad character at all. It's just there was no real context to it. It was like you say, it would be the same, wouldn't it, if the far right decided they were going to take over the asylum? It would be a complete mess. It'd be a mess of another proportion. Things need to go back. I mean, I'm looking now what's coming up in Phase 5. We've got Ant-Man and the Wasp, Guardians of the Galaxy, The Marvels, Captain America: New World Order, Thunderbolts. I don't know what that is. That sounds like a remnant of Phase 4. Blade. So Blade, quite possibly, if that gets the rework, in fact, I don't even want to consider that. Phase 6, as it stands, we've got Deadpool 3, Fantastic Four, Avengers: The Kang Dynasty, and then Avengers: Secret War. If I'm looking between the lines here, I could see Phase 6 it could be a pickup again. And I think I would be willing to see what happens here, because I don't know how you dilute Deadpool. I don't know how you dilute Deadpool, but here's the thing: to get people interested in Deadpool 3, they had to do that really cheap parlor trick where they introduced Hugh Jackman.
Yeah. It's not enough to get me, past all the stuff that Disney has done, and all the directions and all the admissions about the not so secret gay agenda. Which isn't anything about gay people. It's the weaponization of that for identity politics, cultural Marxism purposes. That's not really a sentence. I'm just kind of throwing loads of words out there, but I know what I meant there.
No, and I know what it's not about tolerance and intolerance. It is about, what would you say it is about? I think
it's about reading between the lines and seeing what they're doing.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it's just not. It's not a good thing, is it? It really isn't. When you politicize things that people hold dear to themselves, like video games, like comic books, like Marvel films, like DC films, when people hold things dear to them, shouldn't that be respected?
Well, that's the thing. This thing should be escapism, and this isn't the most important thing going on in the culture. Or this kind of ranks very low on the scale, kind of thing. But it's just easy to talk about, and obviously that's the point of this channel. We talk about films and stuff. I mean, we could talk about Hunter Biden's laptop, or we could talk about any of that kind of stuff. But I don't think we're really
that. I'd love to talk about his laptop sometime, but it isn't the. That's the thing. We're not. This is your channel. This is culture. This is movies. We're not here to push a political agenda, are we? That's the whole thing. That it isn't. It'd be like saying we're going to talk about Deadpool 3, but before we do that, let's talk about Hunter Biden and his laptop.
Yeah.
It's
well, yeah. I mean, like I say, I've said this before. I mean, this isn't something that I usually dedicated a lot of time to when we used to do videos and stuff. But I mean, our franchises have been repurposed and repackaged to spread the message and to obviously push an angle, a political angle. So that's kind of what I've done with the channel here. So obviously we've got brandxreviews.com. You go there and you get a bit of like entertainment news, but in a context of the culture war. And it might explain as to why you've not seen me talking about any new Marvel movies for quite a lot of years. When it was like a staple feature of this channel. I just don't do it anymore because I haven't been following it. I've not been giving Disney a penny. So there you go.
And it's very sad because that is you were somebody who would go day one, you'd book time off work, and you would be excited to go see that film, and you give your friends the opportunity to go with you, but you were going on your schedule because you were excited about it. And I loved that because it was like, this is really good. Let's time to get excited about it. In fact, I even got into it to such a degree where I wouldn't want to watch films. Do you remember? Sorry, trailers. I wouldn't want to know. That's the level to which I went. I didn't want to know.
The innocent times. Do you remember the innocent days when you thought that watching the trailer for The Last Jedi would ruin the movie?
Yes. Yeah, I did.
We were so naive, weren't we?
Yeah, I thought I don't want to know, and I used to have to leave the theatre before films came on, and in some ways it was really enjoyable because I wasn't sort of guided by anybody's preconceived notion of what this film would be. I formed my own opinion of it. And there's been and I still do that now. If I read about a film and the synopsis piques my interest, I am going to watch that film, such as The Black Phone that we went to see. I didn't want to know.
Good film.
Yeah, and I didn't want to know anything about it other than the fact that it sounded like it was going to be an immense film, and it turned out to be the case. But I've also watched some absolute garbage based on what I thought would be really good. So, you can't always.
This year's been pretty good. I mean, this year's maybe reassured us a little bit. We had Top Gun Maverick, and that did insane success. And it wasn't anti-woke; it was just not woke. And we don't speak in those kind of terms. We don't say it's not enough to be not woke. You have to be anti-woke. We don't use that kind of thinking. We don't really want anti-woke. We want escapism. Being not woke is as good as it gets. And that movie stayed out of it.
That's the thing. You want people. You don't want politics in movie unless it is a political film. You don't want it.
Yeah. Well, the Daily Wire started doing this. They've made a couple of movies. Well, they've made a few movies. In fact, I think I've got them down here. I'll just show you right quick because obviously they got Gina Carano, didn't they, in on their studio working with them. I've got them somewhere around here, but there was that new one that they did, Terror on the Prairie, which was a western.
Any good?
Yeah, I'd recommend it. I mean, obviously it's a small studio, and don't know why I can't find it. It's definitely around here somewhere. Topher's nicked it. That's what it is. No, but they also did Run, Hide, Fight as well, which was another one that was pretty good. But again, it was a Daily Wire, but there wasn't any culture war stuff in it. It was just basically a non-woke film, which had some pretty positive messages in there as well, but not like in your face and preachy or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's good to have movies like that. There was also the Batman movie as well that came out this year. I mean, some people criticise some little aspects of it in terms of culture war, but I think I could kind of explain that aside.
Yeah,
not
you
to get it
enjoyed
now.
Batman, didn't you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's not going to be for everybody, but I thought it was decent. It kind of got me interested in some of the DC stuff that I'd kind of avoided, like the Justice League movie, and I went back and rewatched the Zack Snyder trilogy and kind of appreciated them a bit more for what they are. If you watch those three on their own in isolation, especially Man of Steel is very good.
Yes.
You can kind of enjoy them for what they are.
But I also think that, and I was saying this to you for a while, I think that they were resetting the DCU, whatever you want to call it, universe, however you want to phrase it. And I think they are doing groundwork for it, such as Henry Cavill coming and appearing in Black Adam. I think they are setting the groundwork, and I think it's reason to get excited again about movies. I think they are doing it right over there. And I think they are going to pick up the baton of where Phase 3 ended, and we're going to get Phase 1 of the DCEU, and I think that is an exciting. As a 45-year-old man who shouldn't really be, who thought these sorts of movies just wouldn't hold any excitement anymore, I am genuinely excited to see what comes. I'm excited to see Black Adam, but I didn't have a chance to go see it at the cinema. But I will be seeing it I will be seeing it as soon as it's released at home, without a doubt, because I've heard very good things about it. I think the budget was too high for it. I really do. And I think it was probably, in the context of the films and the comic books, I think they should have linked Black Adam in with Shazam. But that's the politics that comic book fans like. How should
Exactly.
they even Shazam? That's kind of like like Batman versus Superman, wasn't it? It was supposed to be the most amazing film that we were ever going to see, and yeah.
Well, it's a good example. That's the politics we should be arguing about. Could Batman beat up Superman, stuff like that? But we're gonna have to cut this fairly short in a couple of minutes. But we can bring us back. You mentioned Henry Cavill can actually bring us back to where we started talking about Frosk. I don't know if you saw this, but it was hilarious. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. She outed Henry Cavill and said something like, "Let's not remember that this is the man who says he won't date women." Because he's afraid of getting Me Too'd, or something like that. Not won't date women, but that he's afraid of dating women because of that. And also, when he was 30, was going out with a 19-year-old. It's like, well, that was in the UK, and that's, again, I mean, the legal age of consent is 16. The age difference between a 30-year-old and a 19-year-old isn't that, like, I mean, I've kind of gone there, to be fair. When I was 30, I was going out with someone that was just 20, and we were together for quite a long time. But
was it Tara King who he was dating?
Yes.
It was Tara King. She's a British lady. He had a brief relationship with her. And if you have a look at a picture of them, she does not look anything like a 19-year-old. And he doesn't look like a 31-year-old. And sometimes an age gap just works. It works because the lady is a little bit more mature. The guy is a little bit immature. They meet in the middle, and it works. It really does work.
Probably my story, to be fair, when I was going out with that one that was like 20.
Yeah, but this is the thing. There's no predatory behaviour by Henry Cavill. There isn't at all. There was nothing predatory.
somebody did a meme of it, and it so perfectly captured the thing. It was basically, this is not what not asking for consent is. And it was a picture of Henry Cavill with a younger woman with Frosk in the background saying, "You didn't ask for my consent." It's like, it's none of your fucking business. That's not how this works. Your opinion on those two doesn't make him a predator just because you don't like it.
And I think that, and it's funny that she only mentioned that when he announced that he wasn't going to be playing Gerard. The Witcher again.
Yeah.
So I can't help but think that she actually did have a thing as him, as Geralta Rivera in The Witcher. I can't help but think that she enjoyed it, and she's disappointed.
Yeah.
It's a very strange way to speak about disappointment.
Well, yeah, I mean, women kind of peak in terms of like attractiveness, generally speaking, when you take all women and all men, around about 23, whereas men peak more around about 36, and they don't peak for the same reasons, as in like physically attractive, being like in good shape. There's lots of different things that make a woman attractive that make a man attractive. So they peak at different ages, which is why you'll get like age gaps and so on. So like with James Bond, people think, oh, it's ridiculous that James Bond is like in his like 40s and he's going out with a 20-year-old. That's disgusting. It's like, he's James Bond, you know what I mean? When she's 40, she's not going to have that same level of appeal in terms of, on that level anyway. So, and these are the rules. This is the game that everybody plays, So we're all part of that.
Age gaps work the other way. Zsa Zsa Gabor used to date men in their 20s when she was in her 80s. These things happen, and as long as everybody's in agreement and there's no harm, why is the questions over it? There's no question of legality.
Yeah, but anyway, we'll wrap it up anyway, because we started talking about Frosk and we've kind of ended it there. I think we've done a couple of good videos here. Anyway, we've ranted a little bit.
But I do wish Frosk would disappear now, along with the G4 network, and I hope if they bring back a gaming network, they do focus on what is actually important to the viewer, and that is the games.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, cut it short there. So you can follow more about pop culture and culture war stuff in that context. If you go to Brondex Reviews, there's a redirect. It takes you to a more recent website where we do all that. Obviously, you're not involved with that as such. I just mean myself and some of the people behind the scenes. You do sometimes send me links and stuff that helps out. But yeah.
And if you want us on again, I'm more than happy to do, because it's nice to talk about things that are interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, thanks for being on. And to everybody else, you can like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time.